Hello, esteemed gentlemen. Never push a quiet man into a corner. He doesn't fight back, he rewrites the entire battlefield. That's the unspoken law people forget when they decide to test a Sigma male. History and psychology both confirm it. Those who are underestimated the most often leave the deepest marks. A Sigma male doesn't go looking for war, but when dragged into one, he doesn't fight loud. He lets life itself drag his enemies through the mud. And here's the twist. Karma has a cruel sense of humor. The same people who whispered, plotted, and thought they were clever eventually end up looking like clowns in a circus they built for him. This isn't about revenge fantasies or action movie bravado. It's about reality. Every time they tried to break him, they accidentally handed him fuel. Every time they thought they were exposing him, they ended up exposing themselves. And while they sit in sleepless cycles of regret, he's somewhere sipping his coffee, calm, detached, and probably wondering why they thought he'd ever care in the first place. This is the part nobody tells you. When you leave a Sigma male alone, he disappears. But when you disturb his peace, everybody involved pays the price. And it's a tab that keeps collecting interest. Number 1. Their regret is the only justice he needs. Their regret is the only justice he needs. That's the quiet truth people never want to admit. A Sigma male doesn't chase revenge because the world has a cruel way of delivering it without his effort. The same people who went out of their way to sabotage him end up haunted, not by what he did to them, but by what they did to themselves. They can't shake the thought, if only we left him alone. That single regret festers day after day, turning into a punishment harsher than anything he could have orchestrated. Regret is a different kind of prison. It doesn't shout, it whispers at night when they can't sleep. It replays their words, their actions, their betrayals on a loop they can't escape. The Sigma isn't in their lives anymore, but the ghost of what they did to him lingers like a shadow they can't outrun. And here's the irony. They thought they were hurting him, but the only person truly scarred is themselves. What they never understood is that Sigma males don't tie their peace to other people. He never needed them for validation, so losing them wasn't a wound, it was freedom. Meanwhile, they can't escape the gnawing knowledge that they destroyed something they'll never get back. That awareness, that sickening we created our own downfall, is the very karma playing out in slow motion. The Sigma doesn't have to lift a finger. He doesn't need to plot, argue, or expose. Their regret is the exposure. It shows up in their eyes when they see him thriving without them. It shows up in their tone when they try to explain to others why things fell apart. But the excuses sound emptier every time. They wanted him to crumble, but instead, they're the ones carrying the weight of unfinished guilt. The cruelest thing about karma isn't punishment, it's memory. And for those who crossed him, memory becomes a lifelong sentence. While he walks away untouched, their regret becomes the justice they'll never escape. For a Sigma, that's more satisfying than revenge could ever be, because life itself handed him the victory. Number 2. They accidentally made him untouchable. When people tried to break a Sigma male, they thought they were cutting him down, but all they really did was strip away everything that could be used against him. Illusions, attachments, expectations, all the little strings that normally tie a man down were burned off in the fire they lit. What's left is someone with nothing to prove, nothing to protect, and nothing they can threaten him with. That's the point where he becomes untouchable. The most dangerous man isn't the one with a sharp tongue or a loud army, it's the one who has nothing left you can take away. A Sigma male reaches that state without even trying. By surviving betrayal, rejection, lies, and manipulation, he learns that the world can't actually rob him of who he is. The masks fell off, the illusions shattered, and instead of being destroyed, he walks away lighter, freer, and sharper. This is where karma bites those who pushed him. They wanted him weakened, but what they created was a man who no longer cares about their games. You can't blackmail someone who isn't hiding anything. You can't humiliate someone who already embraced his scars. You can't control someone who doesn't want what you're offering. That's what makes him so dangerous. Not aggression, but detachment. He becomes immune to the hooks that catch everyone else. The very things they tried to use as weapons, his past, his pain, his isolation, became the steel that shields him. Now he doesn't have to defend himself because there's simply nothing to attack. They wanted to see him crawl, but instead, they unlocked a version of him that doesn't crawl, doesn't kneel, and doesn't even pause. They created their own nightmare, a man beyond reach, untouchable in ways they'll never understand. Number 3, they taught him not to need them. When people pushed a Sigma male out, they thought they were cutting him off from something essential. What they didn't realize was that rejection is his training ground. Every cold shoulder, every betrayal, every door slammed in his face forced him to adapt. Instead of running back, begging or breaking, he learned how to function without the very people who wanted him dependent. That's the one lesson they can't take back. Because once he learns to live without you, he never forgets how. It's a brutal kind of irony. They assumed he'd crawl back, desperate for their approval, but instead, he found independence sharper than any bond they offered. He learned that comfort is often a trap, that belonging can become a leash, and that depending on people who don't value you is worse than solitude. By pushing him out, they didn't weaken him. They cut the rope and set him free. And here's where karma twists the knife. The moment they regret losing him, he's already too far gone. They're left staring at a man who now knows how to breathe without their air, eat without their table, and thrive without their permission. The more they wish to undo it, the clearer it becomes that they taught him resilience at their own expense. This is why a Sigma becomes so dangerous after betrayal. He doesn't chase, he doesn't plead, and he doesn't wait. He rebuilds his world from scratch, brick by brick, until nothing in it depends on anyone who once tried to break him. That independence is irreversible. They may apologize, they may try to return, but deep down he no longer needs them. So their power over him is gone forever. What burns them the most is the realization that they trained him in his own freedom. They thought they were punishing him, but really they were just showing him how little he required them. And once he absorbed that lesson, he became unshakable. That's the karma they can't escape. They taught him not to need them, and now their regret doesn't matter, because he'll never need them again. Number 4, they fear his comeback without seeing it. What unsettles people the most about a Sigma male isn't what he does in the moment, it's what he chooses not to do. His silence doesn't mean weakness, it means calculation. They know he's holding back, and that's what terrifies them. Aggression is predictable. You shout, you fight, you lash out. But restraint? Restraint is unpredictable. It makes people wonder what he knows, what he's capable of, and when he'll decide to act. That quiet threat is heavier than any open attack. They lie awake, not because he exposed them, but because he could at any time. The uncertainty eats them alive. Every time he says nothing, it reminds them that he has the power to flip the table whenever he feels like it. That's why his presence is so unnerving. They see a man who could burn everything down, but chooses not to, and they don't understand why. His receipts aren't just literal proof, though sometimes they are. His receipts are memory, insight, and an awareness of every move they made against him. He doesn't forget, he doesn't erase, he just stores. And unlike others, he doesn't rush to use what he knows. He waits, and waiting is scarier. It gives their paranoia time to fester because they don't know if the comeback is tomorrow, next year, or never. That suspense is the punishment. The danger lies in the fact that he doesn't need revenge to prove anything. He can drop the truth, pull out the evidence, or shatter their reputation at any moment. But he doesn't. And that restraint makes them second-guess every step they take. They start over-explaining, over-apologizing, over-worrying, trying to manage a disaster that hasn't even happened yet. His silence has already boxed them in. They fear his comeback without ever seeing it because the idea of it is enough to wreck them. They know he has the ability, and they know he doesn't forget. That alone is a permanent weight pressing down on their chest. The comeback doesn't need to arrive. The possibility is powerful enough. And that's why the Sigma male remains terrifying long after the fight is over. Number 5. Their ego collapsed where his ego never existed. Their ego collapsed where his ego never existed. That's the brutal truth that makes a Sigma male so hard to defeat. Most people run on ego. It's their fuel, their identity, their fragile shield against the world. They need to feel superior, validated, and praised, or else their sense of self falls apart. That's why they attack others. Every jab, every insult, every attempt to dominate is really just them trying to inflate a balloon that's already leaking. But a Sigma male doesn't play that game. He doesn't need to prove he's smarter, richer, or louder. His worth doesn't come from applause or validation. He doesn't measure himself by how many people bow to him or clap for him. That's what makes him untouchable. While others are obsessed with climbing the ladder of perception, he simply steps off it. There's no ladder, no race, no scoreboard. And because he doesn't play, their attempts to wound him land on thin air. When people attack him, they expect him to fight back, to defend his pride. But there's no pride to protect. He's not trying to win the ego contest. So when they come swinging, they're really shadowboxing with themselves. Their ego needs him as a competitor, but he's not even in the arena. That's why their collapse is inevitable. Without someone validating the game, their efforts lose all meaning. And here's where karma strikes with precision. They poured energy into tearing him down, thinking it would feed their ego. Instead, it drained them. They obsessed over proving him wrong, only to realize he wasn't even keeping score. They wanted to crush him, but all they crushed was their own image of themselves. Their ego shattered under the weight of its own emptiness, while he walked away untouched, steady, and free. That's the paradox. The man without ego is the hardest to break, because there's nothing you can take from him. He doesn't rise or fall on the world's approval. And when others finally collapse under the pressure of their own fragile self-importance, he remains calm, unmoved, and strangely untouchable. Their ego is ashes, while he never needed one in the first place. Number 6. Their conspiracies made him more respected. Their conspiracies made him more respected. It's one of those strange twists life always serves up. When too many people team up against a single man, the crowd stops believing the attackers and starts questioning the motive. The Sigma male doesn't need to defend himself because the sheer scale of the opposition becomes his defense. People look around and think, wait, why are they all so obsessed with him? Why do they need so many lies, so much effort just to bring him down? That suspicion alone plants the seed of respect. Respect often doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being resisted. The harder they try to destroy him, the clearer it becomes that he's not ordinary. If he were weak or irrelevant, no one would waste the energy. And deep down, people know it. When a whole group bands together against one man, it reveals a hidden power in him they can't stand, and that power becomes visible to everyone else. The conspiracies backfire because they create a spotlight. Every rumor, every smear, every whispered scheme is free advertisement for his resilience. People notice that while the crowd scrambles, the Sigma stands calm, detached, and uninterested in defending himself. That contrast is striking. It makes him look not only stronger, but untouchable. He doesn't need to scream his innocence. Their obsession screams his importance louder than he ever could. And here's where karma does its work. The attackers end up looking petty, bitter, and insecure, while he gains quiet credibility without lifting a finger. The lies expose their desperation. The constant attacks expose their fear. And the more energy they waste trying to bury him, the more people begin to admire the fact that he never bends. Respect is born, not because he demanded it, but because the world sees how much he must matter to inspire that much hostility. What they intended as his downfall became his elevation. Their conspiracies meant to poison his name turned into proof of his strength. And the Sigma male, who never asked for anyone's respect, ends up receiving it precisely because he never chased it. Number 7. Their gossip became a public confession. Their gossip became a public confession. At first, they thought they were clever, spreading lies, half-truths, and twisted stories to make him look smaller than he was, but gossip always says more about the speaker than the target. And over time, people began to notice it. The lies didn't stain the Sigma male, they stained the mouths that carried them. Every insult, every exaggerated tale, every attempt to expose him only ended up exposing the bitterness, envy, and insecurity of the people telling it. That's the irony of smear campaigns. When one person gets attacked repeatedly, People don't just believe the noise. They start questioning why there's so much of it in the first place. And slowly, the gossip turns into evidence, not against him, but against those who can't stop talking about him. Their obsession becomes embarrassing. Their lies start sounding like confessions of their own failures. When they say he's arrogant, people realize they're just resentful. When they call him cold, people see it's because he refused to give them attention. When they say he's difficult, it's obvious he just wouldn't bow. The Sigma doesn't need to defend himself from gossip because time does the work for him. Lies don't age well. They crack under scrutiny. Patterns emerge. People begin to connect the dots and the truth surfaces without him saying a word. By staying silent, he allows their words to circle back and betray them. The more they talk, the guiltier they look. This is where the real karma sets in. They dug a grave for his reputation, but they fell into it themselves. Instead of ruining him, they ruined their own credibility. Instead of isolating him, they isolated themselves, because people eventually stopped trusting those who constantly slander others. Their gossip became a spotlight shining on their own weaknesses, their own jealousy, their own need to tear someone down just to feel tall. The Sigma male walks away unbothered, while the very people who tried to soil his name end up covered in the dirt they threw. What they thought was a clever attack became nothing more than a loud confession of who they really are. Number 8. They turned his wounds into ammunition. They turned his wounds into ammunition, and that's the part they never saw coming. Every strike they made against him, every betrayal, every disappointment was supposed to weaken him, to make him crumble. Instead, those very blows became lessons, sharp, unforgettable lessons that carved themselves into his mind. A Sigma male doesn't waste pain, he studies it, breaks it down, and then rebuilds himself around it like reinforced steel. What was meant to be his downfall becomes the blueprint of his strength. Pain has a way of teaching truths that comfort never could. Where others would drown in self-pity, he extracts data. He learns who people really are when masks drop. He learns how systems are rigged, how manipulation works, and how betrayal always leaves fingerprints. Every wound adds to his awareness, sharpening his perception until he can see through games and lies with frightening clarity. The pain they handed him becomes a map of the battlefield, and he's the only one who knows how to read it. And here's the brutal twist. Those who tried to break him end up arming him. They gave him first-hand knowledge of cruelty, deception, and betrayal. And now he can't be blindsided by those tactics again. It's like training an enemy in the very strategies they'll later regret, because he learned how to counter them by surviving them. Their cruelty became his education, and their attacks built the resilience they feared most. The Sigma's strength doesn't come from being untouched. It comes from being hit and refusing to stay down. Wounds don't make him fragile. They make him aware, adaptive, and impossible to fool twice. And while his enemies hoped to leave scars as trophies of their power, those scars turned into marks of survival, proof that nothing they threw could erase him. That's why he walks forward sharper than before, while they're left stunned at how their attacks backfired. They armed him with the very tools he needed to see through them, surpass them, and rise above them. The irony is brutal. Their attempt to destroy him didn't just fail, it gave him permanent ammunition they can never take back. Number 9. Their envy ages them, his calm preserves him. Their envy ages them, his calm preserves him. That's the hidden karma most people don't notice until it's too late. Jealousy isn't just an emotion, it's poison. It corrodes from the inside out, draining energy, disturbing sleep, raising stress, and slowly etching bitterness onto the face. The people who envied him thought they were playing a power game, but their bodies and minds are paying the price. While they stew in comparison, he simply doesn't compete. That calm, that refusal to chase becomes his quiet form of preservation. Envy demands constant energy. They keep checking his life, measuring his progress, hoping for his failure, comparing themselves to him. That cycle ages them. It steals their focus from building their own lives, so they stagnate. Meanwhile, the Sigma male stays detached from the scoreboard. He's not looking left or right. He's simply moving forward at his own pace. The result is ironic. They end up exhausted trying to outdo him, while he thrives because he never even joins the race. Stress shows itself in the body. The envious develop tension in their faces, lines in their skin, heaviness in their energy. Their bitterness seeps into how they speak, how they carry themselves. And every time they hear about his progress, it spikes again, accelerating their decline. Their jealousy becomes a full-time job that pays them in wrinkles, fatigue, and anxiety. The Sigma, on the other hand, preserves his energy by keeping his emotions clean. He doesn't waste time comparing or plotting. His peace keeps his body lighter, his mind sharper, his presence stronger. What burns them most is seeing how untouched he looks while they wear the evidence of envy on their faces and in their lives. The contrast becomes undeniable. They look drained by bitterness. He looks fueled by calm. It's not just psychological. It's physical, visible, and irreversible once envy eats away for too long. Their obsession gave them nothing but decay, while his calm gave him longevity. That's the unspoken punishment envy always brings. They thought competing with him would make them greater, but all it did was consume them from the inside. And the man they envied? He simply kept thriving, untouched, preserved by peace they could never find. Number 10. They gave him a blueprint of their weaknesses. They gave him a blueprint of their weaknesses, and that's the cruelest mistake an enemy can make. Every attempt to break him wasn't just an attack, it was a revelation. In their efforts to manipulate, humiliate, or overpower him, they exposed their own fears and insecurities. They showed him what they value most, what they're desperate to hide, and where they crumble under pressure. He didn't have to dig. They handed him the map themselves. When people lash out, they think they're in control. But the truth is, anger and manipulation always leave fingerprints. If someone mocks you for being too quiet, it usually means they're terrified of silence. If they try to undermine your confidence, it shows they're threatened by how stable you seem. Every jab, every scheme, every rumor is a confession in disguise. And the Sigma male, with his sharp observation, doesn't miss it. He collects these confessions silently like puzzle pieces until he has a complete picture of who they really are. This is what makes him dangerous without even trying. He knows them better than they know themselves. While they were busy plotting his downfall, he was studying their methods, noting their triggers, and memorizing their weaknesses. They thought they were teaching him lessons about pain, but all they really did was reveal the exact weapons that could be turned against them. Now, if he ever chose to retaliate, he wouldn't swing blindly. He'd strike precisely where it hurts. But the Sigma doesn't always need to use this knowledge. Sometimes the mere fact that he knows is enough. People feel uneasy around him because they sense he sees through them. Their own behavior betrays them, and they can't undo what they've already shown him. That permanent awareness is the karma they can't escape. He has a blueprint they can never erase. They wanted to weaken him, but all they did was arm him with insight. They tried to expose him, but they ended up exposing themselves. And now, no matter how much they regret it, he carries their secrets like ammunition he never even has to fire. Their transparency is their punishment because they can't hide anymore, not from him and not from themselves. Number 11. They accidentally created his legend. They accidentally created his legend. And that's the most humiliating twist of all. Their entire mission was to erase him, to bury him so deep that nobody would remember his name. But the harder they tried, the louder his presence became. Every attack, every smear, every conspiracy acted like free publicity. People started to wonder, why does this one man attract so much resistance? Why does it take so many of them to try and bring him down? That curiosity alone elevated him beyond the reach of their lies. Instead of being silenced, he became the story. Not because he begged for attention, but because the drama surrounding him made him impossible to ignore. His calm in the face of chaos, his refusal to break, his ability to keep rising after every fall, all of it turned him into something bigger than just a man. He became a symbol. And symbols live far longer than gossip. Legends aren't built in comfort. They're forged in conflict. What they didn't realize was that by trying to crush him, they were handing him the very stage they thought they were denying him. His survival became proof of his strength. His endurance became a spectacle people respected, even admired. Instead of looking like a victim, he looked like the one who couldn't be defeated no matter how many tried. That image alone gave him a myth-like aura they could never undo. The beauty of it is that he didn't need to advertise himself. They did it for him. Every scheme, every public insult, every backhanded attempt to discredit him only spread his name further. Their obsession became the marketing department of his resilience. And now, even those who don't know him personally hear whispers of the man who was tested relentlessly and still never bent. That's the irony that eats them alive. Their effort to erase him ensured he would never be forgotten. Their hatred turned into his reputation. Their conspiracy turned into his legacy. They tried to destroy a man, but instead they built his legend, a legend that will always outlive their envy, their lies, and their regret. Number 12. The loneliness they tried to force on him turns on them. The loneliness they tried to force on him turns on them. When they cut ties, spread rumors, or pushed him to the edge, they thought isolation would crush him. But for a Sigma male, solitude isn't a punishment. It's his default setting. He's not afraid of being alone because alone is where he recalibrates, where he sharpens his mind, and where he finds peace others can't imagine. What they thought would cage him became the very space that freed him. The irony is brutal. The same emptiness they hoped would swallow him is the void they can't handle themselves. Most people need constant noise, validation, and distraction just to escape their own thoughts. They survive through groupthink, through the comfort of being surrounded by others. Even fake support feels better than silence. But when karma flips the script and they end up isolated, that silence becomes suffocating. The loneliness they designed for him becomes their prison. Meanwhile, the Sigma thrives in that same space. He uses solitude as a forge, turning pain into focus and betrayal into wisdom. The absence of people doesn't weaken him. It strips away distractions and leaves him with clarity. While they struggle to fill the void with noise, he builds strength from the quiet. Their punishment is that they can't survive the very condition they tried to weaponize against him. And this is where karma stings the most. Their plan backfired because they never understood him to begin with. They thought isolation was a weakness, but for him it's oxygen. They thought loneliness would break him, but it only made him more self-sufficient, less reachable, and far more dangerous than before. The trap they set became a mirror, forcing them to face the silence they fear while he walks away untouched. In the end, they discover that solitude doesn't destroy a Sigma male. It destroys the people who don't know how to live without constant validation. They tried to exile him, but instead, they exiled themselves from peace. And now, the loneliness they weaponized has turned against them, while he remains steady, calm, and stronger than they'll ever be. In the end, what was meant to break the Sigma male only revealed the truth. You cannot destroy a man who never needed your approval, your protection, or your stage to begin with. Every conspiracy, every lie, every attempt to wound him only sharpened his insight, strengthened his resolve, and stripped him of illusions until there was nothing left to use against him. His enemies became his teachers, his wounds became his armor, and their hatred became the fuel that made his legend untouchable. The cruelest twist of karma is this. They thought they were writing his downfall, but they were only writing their own confession. Their envy aged them, their gossip exposed them, their conspiracies elevated him, and now they live haunted by regret, carrying the knowledge that the only thing they ever succeeded in doing was making him larger than life. The Sigma male doesn't walk away bitter, he walks away free. Free from their chains, free from their validation, free from the weight of needing anyone who once tried to bring him down. His silence is heavier than their noise. His calm is stronger than their rage, and his very existence is proof that the man who cannot be controlled is the man who cannot be destroyed. They should have left him alone, but they didn't. And now every scar, every whisper, every failed plot stands as part of his story. A story they accidentally helped create, but one they will never be able to erase. That is the justice. That is the legend. That is the Sigma. If this breakdown shook you, If it opened your eyes to the power of silence, resilience, and the karma that always finds its way back, don't just scroll past. This channel is where we strip away illusions and tell the raw, unfiltered truth about Sigma life. So if you value honesty over clichés, strength over noise, and wisdom over empty talk, then hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a like if this hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment with your own thoughts. We read every single one. This isn't just content. It's a movement of people who see through the games and choose to walk their own path. Join the community, stay locked in. Because here we don't just tell stories, we expose realities. Subscribe, like, comment, and share, because the Sigma truth deserves to spread.